Hi, I'm Mike Haduck, and today we're in Machu Picchu, Peru. So this is it. We're walking in. It's raining like hell. We're walking down into the stonework here. And when I come on these trips, I know just about as much as everybody else. I watched a lot of videos on what goes on in the stonework. And there's a difference. They got something called megalithic. That's like prehistoric, and that's this kind of stone where it's big. This is all granite, and everything is real tight. And this was a period before the Incas. And then as they came, the Incas came, they just started piling it one on top of another. And then when the Spanish came, they started using cement or lime mortar, whatever you want to call it. So that's what I learned from the videos. It's a guy called Brian Forrester. I picked a lot of stuff up from him. He does a lot of stuff from, he's got geologists, and he's got architects, archaeologists, stonemasons, a lot of good information there. And you see something with cement that was reconstructed after the Spanish period. This is one of these huge stones laying up here. And you look down it, it's not perfectly straight, but if you really wanted to work it, you can get it straight. And when you're quarrying something, you always look for the seam, and you bust it open in the seam. Here's a perfect example. Is this stone was seamed at one time, and yet it's pretty damn straight. Here's a perfect example of all the seams in this stone. And if I was going to quarry this, I could quarry that right out of there, and if I was going to build a wall, I would build it according to the way it all seamed out. Here's one of the famous sites. It's almost like they got something and planed it in there. And then everything fits real tight. And over here, when you see that, that's from an earthquake. And the earthquakes up here go east and west. And over here you can see how this was planed out. So a lot of these stones were rough stones, and they worked it until they got it to where they wanted. This is another famous part. They got all the stones perfectly fit. Now, all these stones, they were thousands of years ago, and when the Incas came, they worked on top. They just piled them like that as best they could. Over here we got these things sticking out. You're gonna love my explanation at the end here, how I think they did all this stuff. Now, these are stones that were protruding out of those Inca walls to tie down the roofs, and this is for door hinges. They did fit it awful tight though, so it really had to be worked. See this part here? This part under here, I wouldn't doubt when they carved the stone they left this here, and whatever they used to pull the stone up and down as they seated it. And what's that? That's a snail. But this is the back part of that. You could see here and here and here and here, but on the back side of the stone it ain't absolutely perfect. So they butted two stones up, one stone this way and one stone that way. This is a hitching post, I guess. I don't know. Take a look in the back. Now this stone, here's an example. See, there's a space in there. So they're seated just good enough so they seat. I don't know what they call this, but they just carved it out of a big stone here. I'll give you a little view of where I'm standing right now. It goes all the way down. The river's down there. And then you go this way. There's all those terraces, retaining walls up that way, if you could see them. And you come around this way. You see more of the ruins. Right back into You see a little peak. We have a big retaining wall here. And here's one of the pieces that fell. Again, for this kind of retaining wall, they just do what they gotta do. It's not building the retaining walls or shaping the stones, it's lifting the real big heavy ones. But see, this is built on top of stone already. This is stone that's been actual earth stone that's on the ground, as you can see it right here. When they build those castles in Europe, you've seen the same thing. They always built it on top of stone. Everything is here is one way. You start one way so you're not bumping into everybody. A lot of times you can see how they carved into the stone. Some steps. Another huge retaining wall. Again, when you see this kind of building with cement in it, this was reconstructed. It's another stone. They have the carvings out of the steps. There's another set of steps carved out of pure granite. Of course, they're not the same size, but close enough. Right here, looks like a couple bird bats. And here's like they call megalithic. You get up into here, and that's Inca. It changes. Now in the pyramids of Egypt, you get to Egypt and you get to the castles in Europe. You can see they've been built and rebuilt and built and rebuilt again over hundreds of years. So that's the way I'm kind of looking at this. Kind of little cave. See how these are nice and clean, and these are real dirty. The stonemason came and put them back in here after the water pushed them out. There's a guy cleaning all the weeds out of the stone. Here they are, they're cleaning all the weeds out of the stone. Otherwise the jungle would take over. Megalithic, if you want to call it that. See where they had an earthquake up here. Here's a doorway. And look on the other side, you notice there's a split up there. And they got a hole going through that stone. And you get up to the other side, and the stone sticks out. These walls were all double-faced. And you can see that when you look inside them. They're all double-faced. Well, I gotta say, before I came here, I looked at a lot of videos to see what a lot of opinions were, and I'm gonna give you my opinion. Now, it could have been built, you know, before the flood, like in Genesis 6:4, where there were giants and that. But my opinion is, what happened was, there was a lot of people sitting here doing nothing. They didn't have the internet, they didn't have computers, didn't have telephones, and they figured they got to put the people to work or they're going to revolt against them. So they put them to work building all this stuff. So years from now, they could, thousands of years, they'll have people kind of come here to figure out how they did it. Now, as being a stonemason, it's not forming the stone that gets me, it's lifting the stone into place. How did they get people to lift the stone into place? Well, again, they didn't have architects, they didn't have engineers. So what do? You look for the laziest guy. Laziest guy will always find the easiest way, and that's how they got the big stones from here to there. So that's my opinion. You see, these stones, you could beat these stones with other stones to get that smoothness, but the back of the stone is still rough. Put the front stone here, and if you're doing a double face, you put the other stone over there. Now, just to say something about that peak up there, people up there too, you have to get special tickets to climb that. Climbing up the steps. So we're walking up to what they call the Sun Gate. I'll give you a little view here. And right down at the bottom, that's where we came in. And we have all these retaining walls. And I'm going to point out something I've been preaching and preaching and preaching. There's three types of retaining walls. Those that fell down, those that are falling down, those that are going to fall down. Anytime you build a retaining wall, you got to put the earth over the top of the retaining wall so the ice and the water goes over it, because if it gets behind it, it's going to be no good. They keep preaching that and preaching it, and you're going to look down here at all these retaining walls, and they're all the same way. Even though they're in the tropics, they're all the same way. We're walking into what I think they call the Sun Gate. I can't be certain, but from here, look at Machu Picchu down here. These are all retaining walls. You could see how big they are. And here's some of the stones that actually fell down. So there's no saw marks or anything, but as they cut them, they just cut out enough where it will fit. So I'll be doing a little demonstration back home on the way I think they did that. Yep, they got some funny looking sheep up here. See the retaining wall? See the steps right there? I want to point that out. That was the steps they would get up on these walls. And again, I gotta tell you, and I keep preaching, the grass, the top of the earth has to go over the top of a retaining wall. Steps aren't code. And I'm just joshing when I say that because it was just, see how you walk up them? Use your foot, walk up. That's how the Incas did it. That's what we call the ceremonial rock. We're going to look up there. You can see the snow in them mountains. There's another peak right over there. We're up old 9,000 some feet right now. It's the snow on them mountains. Well, looking down there, you can see the road the bus takes up to get into Machu Picchu. So I'm going to do a little thing on fitting stones, the way modern people do it in Pennsylvania and the way they did it back then. Now the first thing you want to know is if you're going to find out how long a stone lasts in northeastern Pennsylvania, United States, where I live, where do you go? You go to the cemetery because they got all the dates on it, and you look at the type of the stone and you'll know how long it's going to last. This is granite, and it was 1911. That granite's as good as new, so that hard stone could go a long, long way in time before it disintegrates. Now this one is made out of a light sandstone, and I can't even read the date on it, but it's less than 100 years old. And let's look how far apart it disintegrated already. Now the first thing we got to know is that when we're going to be putting stones together, we always want to look for something that's going to fit real close. Well, that's not bad, but it's not good. This one's no good. This way, this way. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. We're looking for something that's easy to work with, that's going to fit. You always look for your easiest stones. So this one isn't bad. So we know whether it's a big stone or a little stone, we're going to have less work to do on this one. So what we want to do is we want to find a point like this, and we want to scribe that stone. We go right along the edges so we know how much to cut off that stone to make it fit properly. And then after that, we're going to be using modern tools now, but later on we're going to use some the way they did it. So we know right here this line, if we cut that stone back, that's got to fit pretty good. I'm going to put a marker right here so I know where the stone was, and a mark right there so I know that these two sections are going to line up. Now we're going to take this stone, and there's our scribe mark, we can see it, and we're going to do a modern day with a diamond saw, cut it. First thing we're going to do is score that line. And we come back in with our cut stone. We put it up even with our marks. And not bad. We got there pretty good. Now we're looking at a couple big stones. And the same thing in Machu Picchu. What you do is you try to find a stone that comes close enough. And since we're not using a diamond blade, which is a very hard stone to cut in this, we use a piece of granite. And the old timers would do nothing but all day just keep beating on that granite until they got that stone to go the way they want it. they wanted to face it this way, they just keep beating on it, and you can see how it's starting to already face it. You just keep beating on one stone against the other stone. Now, when I was in Egypt near the unfinished obelisk, I was using a dullite pounder, it's called, dullite, and I was pounding on the stone. That is basically the same thing. Now, this is a stone from the region of Machu Picchu, and it's granite. And if you take that granite and you go against other granite, you can keep sanding that stone down, and it takes a long time, but already you can see how it's getting smooth. And that's how they did it. Growing up as a stonemason in my area, I learned the old school techniques that the guys from the WPA and the guys who worked from the churches in the 1920s and 30s taught me. Now today it's kind of a new school thing, and I got a video out. It's called Stone Cutting, Laying, and Making Patterns with Jeff Haduck. We show the actual way we do the stone cutting with the chisels, and then you show how we cut out the patterns for the stone. I show how we put the patterns on the blue stone, cut them with saws, lift them with the modern machinery, and use torches to cut them. Now that's all new school. That's a kind of basic way we do it out in the field. Today they got water jets, they got laser jets, they got big saws, thermals. They cut the stone out of the quarries and they thermal it. Now, Machu Picchu to me is the same as when I went down to Coral Castle. Coral Castle in Florida is made out of soft coral limestone, and the guy used tools that he made from Model A Fords to put this whole thing together. Now they came out and they said, well, it's anti-gravity, it's aliens, it's this and that, and then in the 1950s they actually did a film of him doing it, and they found it just a couple years ago, and now it's all through the internet how simple he did it. I'm also going to do 3 more videos on Peru when I get to them. One of them is going to be Island of Tambo, and right there was a stone with a saw mark through it that I picked up off of Brian Forrester and Ancient Architects, and I looked at that stone and I agree with them. That is a saw mark. Sacha-Susqueyan, those real huge stones, are going to do that, and one on like the cathedrals and the stonework inside of Peru when I get to it. I also have another channel, Mike Haduck, Travel, Mechanics, and Music. And on this channel I'm going to show you how I actually got there, because yeah, it really is very confusing to get there, and you got to cross your T's and dot your I's. And I went with the guys from the band that I went to the Great Wall of China on. So I'll leave in the description box where you can pick up that video. And I want to thank my viewers for sending me this little costume. They say I look like Harrison Ford. Thanks for watching. I'm Mike Haduck. I'm going to leave you with a few scenes until next video.